Good morning, y'all. It is Saturday, July the 18th, and I want to start this one by acknowledging something that I think most of the people watching this video are already feeling in their bones after the past 3 weeks, and that is exhaustion. Not just physical exhaustion from the heat, though that is very real and very legitimate. Psychological exhaustion. The kind that comes from living through wave after wave after wave of dangerous heat with no real break, no meaningful stretch of normal temperatures, no window where you could walk outside in the morning and not immediately feel the weight of it. We have been in a sustained heat emergency across this country since late June. The first heat dome baked the eastern two-thirds of the United States from June 28th through July 5th, putting more than 160 million Americans under heat alerts, driving heat index values to 110 degrees across the Ohio Valley and the Mid-Atlantic, producing record overnight lows that did not drop below 80 degrees in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, Galveston, and Charleston simultaneously. Then, before anyone could fully exhale, a second dome built across the western half of the country beginning July 6th. Phoenix hit 113 degrees. Salt Lake City tied its all-time record at 109 degrees. Billings, Montana, shattered its all-time temperature record at 111 degrees. And the Wikipedia documentation of this event now describes it plainly as a severe heat wave, in which temperature records have been tied or broken in several major cities across the United States and Canada, concurrent with the FIFA World Cup and the July 4th holiday, with at least 44 confirmed deaths attributed to the event as of early July. 44 people. And the season is not done. Because here is what I need to tell you this morning. And I am going to say it as directly and as plainly as I know how, because the people who are watching this video after 3 weeks of heat deserve directness rather than cushioning. The National Weather Service meteorologist in San Diego, Alex Tardy, said it out loud this week in the most honest possible way. We just got done from a very significant heat wave the past 2 weeks, and unfortunately we do see a warming trend again. Again, not instead, again. And the Climate Prediction Center, the long-range forecasting arm of NOAA, has now issued an explicit warning that above normal temperatures are likely to persist across much of the West and Great Plains into early August, not through the end of July. Into early August, weeks from now. We are not in the final days of a summer heat event. We are in the middle of a summer that is reshaping what dangerous heat looks like for the United States, and another round is building right now today, as I sit here recording this video. And every person in the West, the Southwest, the Southern Plains, and the Southeast needs to understand what is coming and how serious it is before this weekend is over. Let me walk you through what the forecasters are warning about specifically, because the details matter, and I want you to have the real numbers rather than just the adjectives. The National Weather Service has issued an excessive heat watch for much of inland Southern California effective this weekend. The Los Angeles Times documented the full geographic scope of the alert. The majority of inland California, most of Nevada, and parts of Arizona, Oregon, and Idaho are all under official heat warnings or watches as a new heat dome takes shape. NWS meteorologist Alex Tardy described the mechanism with precision. A heat dome, a ridge of high pressure in the upper level of the atmosphere, will take shape over the region, causing dramatic warming as that high atmosphere pressure essentially traps hot air. Thursday and Friday, he said, it starts to build in over our region, with the heat dome expected to peak over the weekend as its center settles above inland California. And then he said the words that define the human reality of what this forecast means for the people of the West. The multi-day nature of this event will create dangerous conditions. Multi-day. Not a one-afternoon spike that breaks by evening. A sustained multi-day event on top of a population that has already been dealing with dangerous heat for 3 weeks. The temperature numbers in the current forecast are extraordinary even by the standards of what this summer has already produced. The WAGO travel weather. Documentation of this event, compiled from NWS data, is specific and alarming. Fresno has been forecast near 115 degrees Fahrenheit, close to its all-time record. Death Valley is approaching 130 degrees Fahrenheit at the peak of the event. Las Vegas and Palm Springs are forecast in the mid-110s. And unlike the first dome, which was centered over the eastern United States and produced its most extreme heat in the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic, this third dome, arriving now, this weekend, on the heels of the second dome that peaked in Billings and Salt Lake City, is centered directly over inland California and the desert Southwest, the Central Valley, the Inland Empire. The communities whose entire summer existence is already organized around survival in extreme heat, and who are now being asked to absorb another multi-day extreme event without meaningful recovery time since the last one. AccuWeather's coverage of the pattern building this week is precise about what is driving the third dome, and why it is arriving so quickly after the second one ended. Along the western flank of the gigantic interior west-central United States ridge, their analysis shows monsoonal moisture will surge northwestward across California and the Great Basin. That ridge, the large-scale upper-level high-pressure system that has been dominating the summer pattern over the western half of the country since early July, has not fundamentally broken down. It has shifted and wobbled, producing the brief relative cool-down that the region experienced over the past few days, but it has not collapsed and moved on the way a typical summer heat dome eventually does. Instead, it is rebuilding, strengthening again, reasserting itself over the desert southwest and inland California as new energy from the Pacific reinforces the ridge rather than eroding it. And the Climate Prediction Center's explicit warning that above normal temperatures are likely to persist into early August is the formal acknowledgement that this pattern of persistent, amplified, high-pressure ridge over the western United States is not going to give way anytime soon. The departure from normal summer temperatures is expected to continue for weeks, not days. I want to spend dedicated time on what 3 consecutive weeks of dangerous heat does to the human body and to communities, because I think this dimension of the heat emergency is the one that gets least attention in the moment-to-moment coverage of temperature records and dome geography. And it is the one that I believe is most important for understanding why the third round is more dangerous than the first 2, even if its peak temperatures are not higher. Yale Climate Connections meteorologist Bob Henson put it in words that I want every person watching this video to hear clearly. He said, for a segment that NBC News published this week directly, nights can be just as dangerous as days. If you don't get heat relief at night, that's going to spill out into your daytime experience and become extremely dangerous. And then he said something that I have been saying on this channel all summer and that I want to say again because it bears repeating every single time. Extreme heat is in the forecast. Heat is not to be played with. It's just as dangerous as a tornado or hurricane that can kill you just as easily, just in a quiet and different way. Quiet. "44 confirmed deaths so far in this event. That number will rise before this summer is done. And every person who dies from heat-related illness in the coming weeks is a person whose death was preventable. Preventable by the simple act of having access to a cool." The current event. And because the wildfire threat from this dome is amplified by exactly the same factors that make the heat itself more dangerous after 3 consecutive weeks. Swain tweeted explicitly this week that there's a good chance that some dry lightning and subsequent wildfire ignitions will occur, particularly over the Southern California and Northern California mountains as monsoonal moisture interacts with the extreme heat. Dry thunderstorms, lightning without rain, over landscape that has been baking under heat dome conditions for 3 weeks on terrain covered in vegetation that has been stressed by months of drought and weeks of extreme heat, is one of the highest risk wildfire ignition scenarios that exists in summer weather forecasting. Colorado's wildfire complex entering July was already covering more than 200,000 acres across 5 active fires. California's fire agencies were already stretched entering this third event. The combination of new dry lightning ignitions on top of active fires on top of a fire weather forecast showing critically low humidity and gusty offshore winds in some areas is the kind of compounding hazard that fire meteorologists describe as a perfect storm for rapid fire growth. If you are in inland California, Nevada, the Great Basin, or the desert Southwest this weekend, please be aware of your local fire situation. Have a go bag ready if you are in a fire-prone area, and sign up for your county's emergency notification system if you have not already. I also need to talk about the power grid situation because it is going to be under significant stress again this weekend and early next week, and the consequences of grid stress during a dangerous heat event are some of the most serious and least discussed risks in the entire heat emergency picture. California's grid operator, CAISO, is expected to issue flex alerts, requests for voluntary conservation during the late afternoon and early evening as the dome peaks over the weekend. A flex alert is not an emergency, it is a request. But the grid conditions that produce flex alerts are conditions in which the margin between available supply and total demand is narrower than normal, and in which an unexpected generator outage or a transmission line failure could tip that margin into an actual emergency. During an actual grid emergency, a stage 3 emergency, which CAISO has declared on rare occasions in previous heat events, rolling blackouts become possible. And a rolling blackout during a heat event at 115 degrees in Fresno or 113 degrees in Palm Springs is not an inconvenience. It is a life-threatening situation for anyone without backup cooling. For every elderly resident, every infant, every person whose health condition makes them vulnerable, whose air conditioning has just gone out in 115-degree heat. Please, during a flex alert this weekend, pre-cool your home before 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Set your thermostat to 78 degrees or higher during the peak hours of 4 to 9 p.m. Avoid using major appliances during that window. Every kilowatt of demand reduction during those hours helps keep the grid stable for the people who need cooling the most and have the fewest alternatives. The southeast dimension of this third heat event is also something I want to address specifically, because it is different from the western story, and it affects a different population with a different set of vulnerabilities. AccuWeather's July 7th analysis documented explicitly that the heat dome would expand into much of the Midwest, and that the heat may even nose into parts of the mid-Atlantic region and the southeast by mid-July. And Climate Central meteorologist Shel Winkley documented something specific and counterintuitive about the southeast's heat pattern this summer. Because of the added moisture and humidity, the southeast could get record-shattering nighttime heat, but below normal daytime warmth. Record-shattering nighttime heat with below normal daytime temperatures. That is the specific signature of an event that is most dangerous for exactly the reasons Bob Henson described: the nighttime heat that prevents recovery, the nighttime heat that accumulates physiological burden, the nighttime heat that kills quietly in the hours when people assume the danger has passed because the sun has gone down. The NWS confirmed record nighttime heat in a number of locations from Texas to Florida, North Carolina on Saturday of last week. Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Tampa, Galveston, Charleston, overnight lows not dropping below 80 degrees. For a population that does not always have reliable air conditioning and older housing stock, for a population with a high proportion of elderly residents in Florida's retirement, your elderly neighbor who lives alone, your family member who is in a home without central air conditioning, your colleague who works an outdoor job, reach out to them today, personally, not a social media post, a direct call or text. Tell them where the nearest cooling center is in their community. Tell them it is okay. It is absolutely okay to spend the day there. Cooling centers are not just for people in crisis. They are for anyone who needs relief from dangerous heat, and using them is not a sign of weakness. It is the correct decision. Second, implement the morning pre-cooling strategy starting today. Before 11 o'clock, when outdoor temperatures are still relatively manageable, close all your blinds and curtains on sun-facing windows. Run your air conditioning to get your home as cool as possible. Then set it slightly higher during peak hours and let the thermal mass of your pre-cooled home carry you through the afternoon. This strategy can reduce your cooling energy use impairs your body's ability to regulate temperature, and accelerates dehydration. Avoid heavy caffeine during peak hours for the same reason. If you are outdoors for any reason during the hottest part of the day, wear light-colored, loose-fitting, lightweight clothing that allows sweat to evaporate, which is your body's primary cooling mechanism, and carry water with you, always. Fourth, never leave a child or a pet in a vehicle, ever, under any circumstances. Not for 1 minute, not for a quick errand. A vehicle parked in full sun at 115 degrees outside can reach 160 degrees inside within 15 minutes. Children and pets die in parked vehicles every summer in this country. They will die in parked vehicles this weekend during this event. Please do not let it be yours.